Let's think about what the word comfort means to you. What came to your mind? Maybe a warm blanket draped around you while you drink something warm? Reading in a chair by a lit fireplace, the only sound around you being the crackling of flames? Whatever your definition of comfort, let's talk a little bit about fear. Have you ever felt instincts take over your body and mind in the face of a perceived danger? Have you ever had raised hackles in a situation abnormal to you? Perhaps even uncanny? Fear is incredibly versatile, and it manifests so completely differently in various situations. Mixing these different feelings, one so sweet and perfect, the other so primal and unnerving, is what I am here to achieve. Welcome, dear listener, to the Horror and Comfort Podcast. Today is an episode which I find to be near and dear to my heart. Our little monster myth is from Eastern Europe. Maybe not the most inviting or friendly place in the world, but definitely not the first place you think of when you're considering monster myths. Are you ready? Because let me tell you, I am more than excited to be speaking about today's special creature feature. The Kikimora. The Kikimora is a lesser-known house spirit. When her name is said, many people don't even think twice about who or what she could be. But today we're here to grant Lady Kikimora the recognition she rightfully deserves. Often overshadowed by the more popular creatures such as the Leshy or maybe her husband, the Domovoi, Kikimora is a favorite of mine when it comes to house demon. When a Kikimora is bound to a home, it is thought she takes residence behind the stove, or within the cellar. This fact used to well and truly terrify me when I was younger, as I would always feel so greatly uneasy stepping near the stove, or even stepping near the basement. No matter where I was, it would always feel like I was being stalked. Watched. Of course, a very uneasy feeling to have, and when you're younger, it just makes you feel worse. But, of course, I digress. Kikimora is believed to be a legendary female creature within Slavic mythology, who is typically described to be both good and bad, depending on the owner, the head of the household that she pesters. Apparently, as well, she makes little noises similar to that of a mouse who aims to find food. Now, personally, I find this description of dear Kikimora to be just adorable. But the appearance of Kikimora is thought to have piercing eyes which glow with otherworldly origins. Her face is often described to be that of a dog, though she can also have a bird's beak, typically the chicken, or rare cases she may have a long, thin snout. Sometimes she can have goat horns, long ones or curved, devilish ones. In fact, it is believed and agreed that the Kikimora can take just about any animal's select features for her personal amalgamation. Fascinating, right? I sure think so. Now, the Kikimora will always appear feminine. She can make herself be a beautiful young lady if she so chooses to be so for the day. Or she can be a hag, most often sighted with a long pointed nose and a hunched back. There is different variations to the Kikimori, which is a plural. Of course, her appearance differs slightly if she's a variation. The swamp Kikimora may look like a disheveled old lady, sporting clothes made of moss with messy and scraggly hair. More often than not, as well, she is described to be rail thin. The swamp Kikimora seems to find it amusing to frighten people and travelers, whom she especially enjoys messing with. In other words, you'd better have a compass should you go trapezing a Slavic swamp, for the Kikimora enjoys leading traveling people astray. Yes, that was a cat. Everybody has to have a recording companion. Moving on with the story, Kikimora tends to lead people to bodies of water so that she may drown them. Now, if you're a child, it seems like you are of special interest to the Kikimori. Maybe because they can't have children of their own. It's thought that she will kidnap a child if they are, well, within her path, sometimes even from a household that she chooses to haunt. It's unknown what exactly she does after she kidnaps a child. However, they are often never seen again. It's a commonly shared thought that the Kikimori may enter a room through the door's keyhole. Now, if Kikimora is to attack, she is depicted to sit on the chest of her victim as she strangles them with her spindly clawed digits. Now, if you're awakened to Kikimora's branch-like fingers around your throat, it's advised to ward her off by trying to draw a cross upon your pillow with your finger. Children in Russia are told to gaze at the window away from her as well to ward her off, or by reciting a prayer as best as they can through their strangled words. Sometimes you can even recite it in your head. Repelling the Kikimora to keep at a distance is a different story. Some leave an upside-down broom at the door, which I personally find myself doing when things seem to be getting hectic in my household. A house which is in order and functioning may have a responsible and good-mannered Kikimora, where she looks after the chickens and does little housework to assist the functioning home. If the home is deemed disorderly, she becomes disruptive by breaking glass dishes and making noise in the night, like whistling, though for no apparent reason. She may also come out to spin a thread in the later hours of the evening, although why exactly the Lady Kikimora decides to spin a thread so late? One can only guess, but nobody knows. An excerpt from the Wikipedia page regarding the Kikimora and her legend reads as following. The concept of the Kikimora is thought to serve basic functions and duties of the household. A Kikimora would haunt a household if a woman did not keep a clean house, if a husband was lazy or abusive, or if children were poorly disciplined. Reversing one's behavior is believed to remove her presence from the house. Besides that, the Kikimora entity is thought to console or explain tragic events like the death of a family member, or the loss of household items. Now, I feel like it goes without saying that should your brush go missing in the middle of the night, or perhaps you misplaced your phone charger, this doesn't necessarily mean that you've got a Kikimora on your hands. However, you really never know, and I wouldn't discredit it. Now then, I did manage to find something very special, although it took me many hours and lack of sleep to find it. There is many different books which go into detail of the haunting of the Kikimora and people's encounters. Vivid descriptions, drawings, paintings, you name it. However, I simply do not have this today. But what I do have is a personal experience from a user over on Reddit, r/paranormal. Posted by a deleted user 8 years ago, the story reads as following. My boyfriend and I have been together almost 2 years. We have lived together in a third-floor apartment for most of that time. My boyfriend tends to have really bad nightmares and trouble sleeping, where he will suddenly awake in the night, heart racing and unable to calm down and properly get back to sleep. This is something he has dealt with for a long, long time. He has also always had a fear of walking past a darkened room and seeing one of two things: a bird-like witchy-looking hag, or himself, a doppelganger. These are fears and trepidation he has had way before he moved into the apartment we now share, and way before he knew me. Well, I moved in, and at first I was convinced the apartment was haunted. We had several strange things happen, including shadow people, strange noises coming from our phones. And I have even been touched and heard footsteps, saw a reflection of my boyfriend in a mirror while he was physically at work. I discuss all of these occurrences and other posts here on Reddit. I will link them in the comments for the curious. The activity died down, and I started to chalk it up to the jitters of living in a new place. With 2 cats, I've never had indoor pets before, and maybe the sounds I would hear and the shapes I would see were the cats messing about, and I just wasn't used to them being around. Out of the blue, we were enjoying some food out on the town, and my boyfriend decides to tell me something that has been bothering him for a little while, but he didn't want to freak me out. He tells me that while he was working about a week before, a word popped into his head and kept coming back into his mind, but he had never heard of it before. Kikimora was the word. Now, I thought it was a made-up word, and I couldn't understand why that would freak him out. Well, that was when he asked me if I remembered the bird-like witch he could picture in his mind that he was afraid of seeing in a darkened room. I replied that yes, I did in fact remember. That's when he took out his phone and he showed me a picture and said it was exactly what he pictured in his head as the bird-like witch he feared. I wasn't making the connection. He then put the puzzle together for me by explaining he only found the picture online because he searched the strange word that had popped into his head and bothered him for a few days. Kikimora. The first picture in this article is the picture in question. Ice slid down my back. We read about the creature and started piecing together some of the things that happened to him on a regular basis. The night terrors, waking up panicking and finding it hard to breathe. All of it. It didn't explain what was happening to me in the apartment, however, so we brushed off the eerie coincidence as just that, a strange coincidence. But not before I saged the apartment. Last weekend, we went to my boyfriend's sister's apartment and spent time with her and her husband. As our conversations often do, we started talking about the paranormal experiences that we'd had. I went to the restroom, and while in there, I remembered the Kikimora story and that his sister and brother-in-law, they had not heard it. But for the life of me, I could not remember the word Kikimora. I came back into the living room and I told my boyfriend he should tell them the story of the bird-like witch that he was so afraid of. He admitted he had been thinking the same thing and was even then trying to look up the creature, but he couldn't remember the name either. We had the whole group looking up Russian bird witch, bird woman witch, and so on and so forth, and we couldn't find anything resembling what we had discovered months before. As I looked, the word finally flashed through my mind as we were all about to give up. Kikimora. So we're all reading the Wikipedia page, and I noticed something that I hadn't seen the first time around. The Kikimora is often paired with a male spirit, called the domovoi. They are a husband and wife pair, so I checked out the Wikipedia page on the domovoi. It seems like an amicable spirit, actually protecting the household from his batshit crazy wife, the Kikimora. But what really got us all freaking out was that the domovoi is known to take the shape of the head of the household, like a doppelganger. This made us all sit in stunned shock, seeing as how my boyfriend has had a fear of not only the Kikimora, apparently, but now his fears of seeing a doppelganger coincide with the legend of the domovoi. On top of all of that, about a month ago, a rooster showed up at our apartment complex. The damn thing crows and crows and crows from about 4 to 10 a.m. It just never shuts up. Someone must be feeding it to keep it around. The only reason I mention it is that legend goes, if the Kikimora is placated with the upkeep of the domicile she resides in, she will then tend to the chickens and housework. Yet another seemingly random thing happening around us that coincides with this Kikimora legend. I just had to share the story, 100% of which is true. Nothing has happened since the domovoi revelation, except that just last night, my boyfriend tossed and turned and had nightmare after nightmare after nightmare. Which, usually it wakes me up, but I slept like a rock the whole night through. Hopefully, this is all just crazy coincidence and I think too much into it. I really don't know. We weren't taking it too seriously, but after all these links and coincidences, it is incredible to me how it all keeps adding up. Now, many years have passed since anything was posted from OP in this particular thread, but just quite a few comments. Let's take a little read through. Sihoon writes the comment following. Very interesting. I'm just curious though, what is your and your boyfriend's cultural background and ethnicity? LP, deleted, responds under the comment. We haven't done much research on our surnames or genealogy, to be honest. We're both Caucasians, born and raised in America for, well, generations. For me, I was adopted, and I know little to nothing about my biological father's history except that the name seems to be in English in origin. My mother's side is English in origin with plenty of Native American ancestry mixed in. My boyfriend has done very rudimentary research on his own surname. I remember him telling me that it was most likely English as well. Means something like of the bush. So, I don't know. Mr. Tree writes the following comment. Wow, that's really weird. On his page for Doma, it says his voice is hollow and harsh. Have you heard any voices? Also, if you have animals, it says it can take an appearance of them. OP replies, "The only voices I have heard were the sound of someone letting out a breath right by my ear. And one time my boyfriend was in the bathroom shaving and his phone was sitting on the counter. He called me in because very faintly the sounds of what had to be a battle were coming through the phone. Men shouting, gunshots, helicopters. I could hear a man's voice saying, 'Don't leave me,' over and over. It was crazy. He didn't have any apps open. He turned his phone off and back on after a bit, and it was gone. Also, we have 2 cats. I haven't noticed anything too strange with them." User A Space Oddity comments as follows. "Well, part of me wants to say that maybe he heard a story about them as a kid, forgot the story, but the character's kind of stuck. But you seeing a doppelganger makes me think something is up. I got the chills when I read the wikis." OP has yet to respond to this comment. User Puda Rex comments as follows. "I've never heard of these creatures and your story thoroughly freaked me out. Thank you for sharing. I have no advice or suggestions, but I hope these nightmares and sightings stop for both of you." Unfortunately, there is no other comments on this post, as the post ended up being archived, as OP would eventually go on to delete their account. The episode comes to a close. And just before we end it off, I have one question for you, my audience. Is the Kikimora of Slavic mythology the kind of creature you'd want residing within your homestead? Would you rather take preventative measures to keep your Kiki as far away as possible? What exactly is your juxtaposition on this chaotic spirit as a whole? I know that I personally wouldn't mind having this Kikimora in my home, so long as she doesn't scare the children that I'm yet to have. A ghost that takes care of the chickens, which I am also yet to have, and some household chores sounds like a useful asset to the home. Of course, until you find yourself drawing a cross on your pillow to repel the Kikimora when she feels a little feisty. As much fun as this first episode was, and truly thank you everybody who comes to tune in for this. Unfortunately, today's episode has finally come to an end. Stay tuned, dear listener. I'll see you again next time.